Chapter 7. Dawn spilled through the curtains of the cabin as I rolled over in the bed beside Lilica. Sleep had come in restless fits. Every sound outside jolted me awake. The call of an owl, the crack of a twig, the rustling of something in the bushes. Life stirred in this darkness, a beckoning wildness I wasn't accustomed to. The grid at night always held a sterile, demanding silence that pressed down on me, fashioned from curfew rules and locked doors. But here there were no rules, no doors that needed to be locked. I stared out the window, the opening in the thin cotton curtains providing a sliver of early morning sky, a palette of pink and purple, washed with a smoky gray. Footsteps sounded from far away, the steady crunch of feet against dry leaves, and my breath instinctively caught in my throat, my heart pounding out a worried rhythm. The door creaked open, and Domin stood in the threshold, his eyes weary and bloodshot. I scrambled out of bed, relief flooding me as I quickly crossed the room to him, the pungent scent of smoke drifting off his clothes and into the cabin. How did it go? He grabbed a bucket of water sitting by the ice chest and placed it on the counter, splashing the liquid against his face and clearing out the smoke from his eyes.
I think I got the Jeep far enough away, and I was able to rip out the motherboard system, so it shouldn't be traced back here.
He took a towel hanging from a hook on the wall.
Did you manage to get any sleep?
Not really. I looked over at Lilica, still deep in the hold of her own slumber, oblivious to the swift deconstruction of her life. Her entire foundation had unraveled, and my restless night had failed to provide me with a clear answer as to how I was going to explain all of this to her when she awoke. I watched him sink into the chair and lean forward, drops of water from his hair staining the pine table a dark brown as he toweled himself off.
So how did this happen?
I sighed and sat down across from him, my hands tracing along the grain of the smooth wood. Things have been really strained between me and Trendon for a while now. I guess it was what made it easy for him to do something like this, to want to turn me in. Domin leaned across the table, his eyes flickering with a sharp anger that pierced into me.
You know, I've never liked that guy.
You've never even met him, Domin. I threw my words at him, trying to defend the last bit of my past. The choices I'd made were now a dark stain on my skin, but they were mine, and without them, I wouldn't have my daughter.
I don't have to. He's controlling and completely brainwashed. You know just as well as I do that those two traits are a dangerous combination.
Lilica stirred in the bed beside me, and I looked over at her, my voice dropping to a whisper. I know, but in the beginning he wasn't like this, and I never thought I would get to this point.
You were a lamb living in a lion's den. What did you think was going to happen?
His words lodged in me like a knife, a bitter sting that took root and settled in my gut. We had always grappled with the roads that had pushed us in different directions, the contempt he had for the society I chose to live in without him. Our past now stretched beside us like a question both of us were afraid to answer.
I'm sorry.
Domin's hand slipped over mine.
I know you've been trying to help people at your clinic. I've always admired you for that.
None of it matters anymore. I glanced out the window. The hours of anxiety had turned sour, and a deflated feeling of emptiness gripped me. It's all gone now.
It's not gone.
His voice grew soft as his thumb slowly swept across my palm, leaving a trail of warmth behind, anchoring me from the rush of my thoughts.
It's just been relocated, that's all.
I looked over at him, momentarily sinking into the harbor of his eyes. Could I somehow make a life for myself out here? Could I cobble together a home and raise my child on the edges of society? And what would that look like? What kind of education could I give her? And what if she got sick? I was a doctor with only basic surgical skills. All these questions tumbled through me like water crashing against stone, leaving me grasping at uncertainty.
Wait.
Domin's eyes captured mine, flickering with the shadows of concern.
Does he know what you've been doing at the clinic?
I shook my head. I don't think so, but I'm sure he's going to order another MCOR sweep just to be sure. I removed my hand from his, wrapping my arms around myself. I couldn't contact Christina last night. She has no idea what happened. Domin leaned back and ran his fingers through his hair.
I know a guy down the road from here. Before he split from the grid years ago, he used to be some tech giant for MCOR.
He stared out the window as he spoke, his brow furrowed.
He's found a way to hack into the grid, and apparently he's working on some untraceable phone line. Maybe you could try to reach her through him.
Really? A weight lifted off me, and relief flooded in. Christina had not just been my coworker. She had become, in so many ways, the only friend I had, and the possibility of the authorities coming after her because I left caused my chest to constrict. That would be so great. I really need to talk to her.
Okay, I'll take you on over to him today.
He ran his hands across his face, his shoulders slumping.
Let me just get a few hours of sleep first. I can barely move right now.
Of course, get some rest. With a nod, he stood from the table and walked over to the large chest by the bed. Quietly opening the latch, he removed his shirt and dug around inside for a new one. Through the pale morning light that spilled through the curtains, his skin was the color of caramel, and the smooth definition of muscle along his back seized me with the flush of memories long buried. It was a landscape I had memorized, but hadn't touched in years, and something fluttered within me. Turning around, he caught me staring, his eyes holding a look of faint surprise as I yanked my gaze away, a bloom of heat creeping across my cheeks.
You know where the outhouse is, and there's food in the ice chest and canned goods on the shelves,
He said as he gathered up the blankets and pillow, placing them beside the ladder to the loft.
Feel free to help yourself if you guys get hungry.
Thank you. I looked over at him. Thank you for everything, for dealing with the Jeep, for letting us into your home. I trailed off, seeking solace in the view outside the window, watching as the sun crested over the tops of the trees, casting a hazy orange glow across the branches. I don't know what I would have done without you.
Seren,
He crossed the room and bent down beside me, taking my hands in his.
I'm glad you're here.
The hours passed, the shyness of dawn receding into morning, and heavy, somber light now spread through the cabin. Where are we, Mommy? Lilica stared wide-eyed into the forest, her hands pressed against the glass of the window. We're in the mountains, love. I smiled at her and removed the kettle from the wood stove, pouring the hot water into a bowl of oatmeal. Domain is an old friend of mine, and he's letting us visit. Is he sleeping inside the roof? She pointed up at the ceiling with a puzzled look on her face. Well, that's called a loft. I placed the bowl of oatmeal on the table and took a seat beside her, running my hands through her tangled hair. Sweetie, how would you feel if I told you that we will be staying here for a while? Why? Well, because it could be a fun adventure, living in the woods, away from all the lights and noise of the city. What do you think? What about Daddy? My gut clenched, and I struggled for words that would thinly coat the truth. I wasn't ready to tell her just yet. I wanted to introduce her slowly to this new reality before I weighed her down with the permanence of it. Your daddy will be staying in the city and taking care of the house. Okay. She grinned up at me and shoveled a spoonful of oatmeal into her mouth, accepting my veiled story, blissfully unaware of what lurked beneath it. The creak of the ladder startled me, and I turned to see Domin climbing down, his hair tousled from sleep.
So you must be Lilica.
A wide smile stretched over his face as he crossed the room and took a seat next to us.
I'm Domin.
I know. Lilica quickly spooned more oatmeal into her mouth. You sleep inside the roof. He laughed and glanced over at me while I shrugged my shoulders.
I suppose I do.
He gave her a wink and leaned back in the chair.
How does a little walk in the woods sound to you? I think your mom needs to make a quick phone call.
With a nod, she pushed back her bowl and sprang from her seat. Can we go now?
I don't see why not.
Domain stood and grabbed his boots beside the door while I scrambled around in our bags, looking for something we could use as a makeshift mask. I realized it had become one of the many things I forgot to pack last night in my rush to get out. I can't believe I forgot our respirator masks. I sat back, the tendrils of frustration pulling at me.
Well, I only have filtered cloth masks. I know they're not as good as the government-issued ones you're used to, but they're better than nothing.
Domain said as he rooted through a drawer.
Here are some extra ones.
He looked over at Lilica with a smile.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Well, then you, little lady, are in luck.
Pulling out a dark blue cloth mask, he handed it to her with a flourish. The woods were enshrouded in a hazy mist as we stepped out of the cabin. Faint morning rays broke through the layer of smoke and slanted through trees, casting amber shadows around us as a Domain led us through a narrow, winding trail, worn down by the press of feet against dry branches. Lilica stared up into the dense covering of trees above, her eyes wide as she took in the wilderness around her. The trees are so tall, Mommy. They are, love. I bent beside her and followed her gaze upward, my words momentarily suspended as I viewed the vivid green from her eyes. Except for the brief trips up here when she was a baby, she had never really experienced the forest before, and something stirred within me as I watched her take in a world so vastly different from the one she had grown up in. It was a joy mixed with the bitter sting of sorrow. So much had been kept from her. We continued walking as her chatter weaved through the branches. Are there animals in the woods? Domain nodded and looked down at her. Yes, there are all kinds of animals that live here. Squirrels, raccoons, owls, coyotes, wolves. Are they in cages? Oh no, they're all free. Lilica turned to me, her eyes full of wonder as she grasped my hand. Mommy, can we see the free animals? Well, they're pretty shy, hun. They usually don't want to be seen. Well, if you're really quiet, though, Domain stopped walking and crouched down low to the ground. You can hear them. Transfixed, Lilica copied his movements, placing her hands on the ground as the silence settled over us. Eventually, the faint sound of birds twittered in the distance, and then the raucous call of a crow shattered through the trees. My breath stilled, caught within the echo of its cry. We never heard birds in the city. Maybe that was because we had taken away their canopy of trees so long ago, or perhaps it was the summer fires from the surrounding states that pushed them further away from us. But here was a wilderness I wanted to run to, and it made my heart ache for a home I never knew, for a place I had yet to find. See? Domain stood, the crinkle of his eyes giving away the smile obscured beneath his mask. They will speak to us if we want to listen. Wow. Lilica looked up into the branches, her gray eyes searching for the source of the calls, like a caged bird herself, meeting the forest for the first time. Turk's place is just around the bend, Domain said, motioning down the path. Lilica fell in step with him, looking up at Domain in marvel as if he held all the secrets to the forest. And perhaps he did. Rugged and beautiful with his sun-kissed skin and disheveled hair, he had always reminded me of something untamed. We approached a small, tidy cabin obscured by trees, branches bowing low over the roof, with a modest garden in the distance. Tomatoes, lettuce, and the trailing vines of squash struggled in the open patch of meager light that filtered through the veil of smoke. Domain knocked on the door, and it creaked open to reveal a tall man with a long white beard, glasses perched precariously on the end of his nose. Looks like you got some visitors this morning, Turk. Domain swept his hand out toward us. Well, it seems I do. The warmth of a wide smile stretched across Turk's wizened face. Please come in. I stepped inside, my eyes falling to a pot which simmered on a wood stove in the kitchen, filling the room with the fragrant scent of cloves, cinnamon, and ginger. His living area was cluttered with papers and books, wooden shelves stuffed with more literature, the spines cracked with age. I stared in awe at the array of words bound and tucked away beneath faded covers, wondering where he had managed to get all these relics from a world so long gone. You're admiring my library, eh? He shot me a knowing look as I removed my mask, his hand reaching out to clasp briefly around mine. I'm Turk. Seren, and this is my daughter Lilica. Very nice to meet the both of you. Domin shut the door behind us and leaned against the frame, slipping his hands into his pockets. We were hoping Seren could use her phone. Of course. Turk adjusted his glasses and shuffled over to a table, rooting through some papers. I know it's buried somewhere in all this mess. Lilica stared at the bookshelves towering over her. What are all these? Those, my dear girl, are stories written a long time ago. Endless worlds for you to discover. Turk gave her a wink as he crossed the room and handed me a square metal device that fit heavily in the palm of my hand. I know it's not the sleek holographic phones you're used to back in the grid, but I assure you it works. Thank you. I pressed open a latch on the side and a rudimentary keyboard revealed itself. Did you make this? Turk nodded. I did. I used to work for the tech sector at MCOR years ago. Managed to smuggle out some of the electrical devices before I left. His hand rested on my arm for a moment, giving it a squeeze. When did you get out? Last night. I glanced over at Lilica, who was running her hands along the spines of books, taking in the alien landscape of paper that surrounded her.
Well, welcome to our island of misfits, he chuckled and turned toward Lilica. Why don't we let your mom make a quick call and we can go explore some of these books? There's one of fairy tales I know is hiding somewhere on this shelf.
I watched Lilica's eyes light up as I slipped outside and shakily dialed Christina's number on the keypad, grateful for my photographic memory. Static filled the receiver and then the faint tone of a connection. She picked up on the second ring, her voice low and hesitant. Hello? It's me. Oh my God. The sound of a door closing and the hum of the air conditioner vent told me she was at the office. What happened? Where are you? I can't tell you where I am. Tears stung my eyes and I blinked them back, knowing this would probably be the last time we would ever speak. Even though this call was apparently undetectable, I knew it was still a risk. The authorities could always confiscate her phone and find some way to trace it back here if they grew suspicious enough. I just wanted to let you know that Lilica and I are out and we're safe. Good. I've been so worried. Her voice choked on the other end and she drew in a sharp breath. Trendon showed up at the clinic this morning and said you were gone. He started asking me a bunch of questions. He was so calm and detached about everything. Honestly, it was chilling. What the hell happened? I stared out the forest, a stark etching of green against gray. He found my stash of medical supplies at the house and was going to turn me in. I closed my eyes as the events of the previous night rushed back. The image of Trendon's cold stare, the extreme grip of his unflinching conviction. How long had I been living with the apparition of a man? I don't think he suspects anything going on at the clinic, but just to be safe, you should probably lay low for a while. Of course, Jesus, Seren, I'm so sorry. A long pause filled the receiver, and then she spoke again. But I'm proud of you for getting out. Maybe one day I will too. I sank down onto the ground, clutching the phone tightly to my ear as a soft static crackled on the line. I'm gonna miss you, Christina. And I'm gonna miss you. Take care of yourself out there. The static grew louder, scrambling her words into garbled fragments as our connection broke up, and then the phone went silent, leaving me with the remnants of her unfinished sentence.